Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie, broadcasting on all our digital platforms throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m, broadcasting on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and live on TikTok. Folks, please send in your greetings, please send in your comments, please tell us where you're watching from, and please tell us what is on your mind tonight. On our behalf, we're going to be talking about invasion. Are we being invaded? What are your thoughts on that particular matter? We're also going to be touching on who is funding all these protests that you see in London, with people spraying orange paint onto prominent buildings and such. Well, we've got the names and we've got the numbers, and we're going to reveal them to you as our Prime Minister prepares to jet off to Egypt to talk nonsense about things that are never going to happen to the world. But somebody's got to have a hobby, I suppose. We're also going to be giving Mr. Sunak some advice as well on how to talk properly with the SNP and not to fall into their false frames, which they love to position the British government and the British Parliament into. So we're going to be giving some advice on that. We're also going to be talking about a freedom of information request which we are going to make to the so-called Scottish government to find out who funds their propaganda when they talk nonsense on Twitter. And we'll have On This Day in British History coming up at the bottom of the hour, and we will also have a prize as well, which will be a wee badge. Here it is here. A wee badge. It's Remembrance Month, so this wee badge will be available lest we forget. Union Jack with a poppy in the centre of it. We'll be asking a question at the bottom of the hour, and the first person to send the correct answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk will get this wee badge winging their way to them. Now, I already see somebody there commenting about the flag in the background. That's a Union Jack with "Lest We Forget" through it. And we had a few of those for sale last week, and they all sold out within about an hour. So we don't have any more other than the office flag there, which we are keeping for ourselves. Although we've got a couple of other remembrance flags which we'll show you in the course of the programme, which are still available for sale. Chap on Twitter there says, SNP hate our forces. Somebody says, get off your knees. Well, we're not actually on our knees. We're sitting comfortably talking to you on our chair, and long may that continue. Hello to all the folk who have come in on Facebook and on YouTube. Derek was first in today. He says, greetings Alistair and fellow unionists around the world, and of course the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Debbie says hello. Good to see Debbie in the house. And D Stanners says evening all. Derek says he's changed his job within a week, so back and able to watch the live chats. Great stuff, Derek. Please do throw in your 5 cents. Adam from the great British county of Leicestershire. Super Typist says, who is organising and funding the protests, and why do the police security stand by and let it happen? Well, let's just talk about that since you've raised the matter after we've said hello to Stephen. The debate in Westminster today was cringeworthy, all rhetoric, no facts, no figures, and just grievance. What a waste of time and energy. Hello to Cy Lister. Derek Hart says that's a nice wee badge that will be available to the winner of our competition. Harvey says hello from Wolverhampton, one of the biggest victims of the invasion. Jamie says, evening all, important date next week regarding all our war heroes. And hello to Rich, and hello to Kat, who says fab to be here as always. Hello Christopher from a very wet Falkirk. Yes, it's wet here in the great British city of Glasgow as well. Now, Super Typist said, who is funding the protesters, those ones who are made up of sort of slightly upset young people and some old people who appear to be on the brink of almost like a nervous breakdown about the end of the world, which is not going to happen, by the way. You can take it from us. The world will be here. The world cannot be destroyed. The idea that the world can be destroyed is a secular fantasy. It can't be destroyed ever. But secular people believe that it can be because they don't have any faith in heavenly things. So here is the article that reveals everything. Just Stop Oil's Spring Uprising protests funded by US philanthropists. And we'll put the link you'll find the link into the comments threads here. And it says the environmental activists whose oil terminal blockades have enraged ministers and commentators has received hundreds of thousands of dollars from the US Los Angeles-based Climate Emergency Fund, CEF. We are their lead institutional funder, CEF's executive director, Margaret Klein Salamon, said. I think actually they're exclusive institutional funder at this point. And she goes on talking about who she and her group fund. A lot of groups we fund use civil disobedience and high-stakes civil disobedience, Salomon said. This year, CEF has made grants of $1.7 million to activists in 25 countries, including the UK. It has particularly focused on the UK with $650,000 given this year to groups including Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion. Salomon confirmed CEF had donated Just Stop Oil hundreds of thousands of dollars. Extinction Rebellion had received about $200,000 from the fund this year, she said. And this article was back in the summer. Insulate Britain, whose roadblock protests last autumn polarised public opinion, were also funded by CEF. CEF operated like venture capital, according to Salomon, seeking out small groups who could benefit hugely from £50,000 to £100,000 donations. Well, it would be good if they sought out a force for good, because we could certainly benefit from a $100,000 donation to promote the integrity of the United Kingdom, but unfortunately we don't have access to professional agitating fundraisers and revolutionary organisations based in the USA. So what you're looking at here basically is this CEF is an American-based international agitation group that acts as venture capital, essentially, as Salomon herself describes it, in order to pay groups that they identify throughout the world, but especially in the Western world, who can benefit from donations of up to £100,000 and much, much more. And you would think, well, isn't this shouldn't that be illegal? And I can assure you, if the British government wanted to make it illegal, they could certainly do so, because they've got the names and they've got the organisations, and they know exactly how the money's coming in, and they know what bank accounts it's going to and all that sort of thing. And if you remember back when the truckers had a protest in Canada, what did Justin Trudeau do? He froze all their bank accounts. Now, I'm not saying that that's necessarily what should happen. I'm just pointing out that that can be done if a government has the will to do it. And of course, it's not being done in this case, and it won't be done in this case. And the reason it won't be done is because these are approved protest groups. Imagine if that was a protest group campaigning about, something that they stick in your arm, or if it was a protest group complaining about mass immigration into the UK, or any other of these unfashionable things. Don't you think that they would shut it down quicker than you could say police brutality? They most certainly would. Okay, so when you see this sort of thing on the internet, when you see groups that are being allowed to continue, you know it's because the government themselves want it to continue for whatever reason. Or they have no desire to shut it down because it's not contrary to their policy. Okay, it's not contrary to their policy, so they keep it going, and they just give it a soft touch. But there's certainly enough information, if they wanted to do it, to stop all of that sort of nonsense. I'm not saying that they necessarily should, I'm just pointing out that they could, but they don't. And similarly on the internet, whenever you go onto the internet now, whenever you go onto Twitter, it's always some video you see of some old boy having a mental breakdown that the world's going to end, in 300 years or something like that. And that's why he's just plastered a statue full of orange paint. Okay? Why am I seeing all of that? Imagine if that was groups that were campaigning against the shot in the arm. Okay, Twitter would be removing all of these videos. They'd be taking them all off the internet. You wouldn't be seeing any of that stuff. But oh no, you're seeing it all the time. It's just pushed because, and I'm not saying they should take these videos off the internet. I'm just saying that when you see something, when you see a protest and you're seeing it all the time, you know that the system is not bothered about that protest. It's either encouraging it or it doesn't consider it to be a danger to its own policies. So that's all the information. That's where all that's coming from. And of course, Rishi Sunak and Nicola Sturgeon are all going off for a camel ride in Egypt to see the pyramids and all that kind of stuff next Sunday for a week. And that was a great jaunt, if you can swing it, that's for sure. And I would actually be happier if Sunak just went and looked at the pyramids and did a few selfies or whatever in front of the pyramids. I'd be like, okay, mate, you deserve a holiday. But to actually go out there on our money and for something that is just so unbelievably pointless and stupid is annoying. And another thing about causes, right? Causes don't have to be true. They just have to be useful as far as professional agitators are concerned. Okay, so that's with this issue about the sun and the world coming to an end. That doesn't even have to be true for these Margaret Klein Salomon and her buddies to care about. All they care about is that it's useful. It's a useful idea around which to create agitation for the sake of agitation. That's all they care about. They don't care if it's true or not. It's just, here's a cause that a sufficient number of people have fallen for. We can use this cause for our own ends, whatever our own ends may be. And our own ends may just be devilment. It might just be devilment. Just agitation for the sake of agitation. And there's a lot of professional revolutionaries who take that point. It's just like, how can we muck up the day to day? I know, let's do whatever, Let's find a cause, get sufficient number of people who believe in it and fund it and just cause trouble. I mean, that's also a thing that people do. Anyway, how are we getting on? I hope that answered your question, Super Typist. Welsh Unionists. Great to see the Welsh Unionists in the house. We need more of them. Hello from Wales. We support your content. May our nations prosper in the Union. Indeed. May they do so. May they do so. Adam asks, was it right for the Home Secretary to call the English Channel crisis an invasion? Let me just answer that in a moment, Adam. A super typist thinks it's just people who have got too much time on their hands. I think that's right, and people perhaps avoiding issues in their own lives that they ought to really be concentrating on, like it's a kind of diversion for them. Derek Hart agrees that with the Welsh Unionists. United we stand, says Sid. Oh, Derek says he's just ordered an AFFG hoodie and he's been informed that it's on its way. So be ready for next year's street stalls and annual meeting. Good stuff. We've got a selection of AFFG hoodies at our T-shirt and hoodie store, and we'll put the link in the comments threads there for you. Hello to Ernest. Good to see you. Ernest is worried because some Scots want a referendum. Well, that's not going to happen, Ernest, so don't worry. And as long as we're here, we're going to do our best to stand up against it. Now, just talking about standing up against it, remember, folks, we are going to be outside Holyrood Parliament on the day that the Supreme Court makes its announcement that the SNP can't have a second referendum. The Nats are planning on being there. We have to be there as well. Now, none of us know what day it's going to be, other than it's going to be a weekday, and it's going to be sometime between now and the end of the year. And so if you think you might be available to be added to our email and text list, so that on the morning that we hear, we'll send you an email, we'll send you a text, and we'll tell you where to go that afternoon. We don't know what day it's going to be, but if you think you can be with us that day, send us an email just now to contact@aforceforgood.uk, and we will add you to our list for notification. We will add you to our action list. It's going to be a great day whenever it is, sometime before the end of the year, I should imagine. Hello to Alan. Ernest says electricity and gas is cheap in Argentina. Does Argentina have energy security? Is that the reason for it? Is it their own energy and gas that you're using there, Ernest? I presume that's why it's fairly cheap. Yes, Kat. That was also, Kat says, it's been reported that the granddaughter of the oil tycoon J. Paul Getty is a founding member of the CEF organisation that's promoting the anti-oil agenda. That is correct. That's actually quoted in this article. I didn't read that out though, but that is quoted there. Make of that what you will. Hi to Nicola. Now, Adam asked, was it right to use the word invasion as far as what is happening at the English Channel? Well, I looked up the definition of invasion. It's very difficult to do. You just Google it. Invasion meaning, and it means, quote, an incursion by a large number of people or things into a place or sphere of activity, or, quote, an unwelcome intrusion into another's domain. So by those accounts, of course, it certainly is an invasion. And it was very interesting, and it is interesting to watch what they're trying to do to Suella Braverman, because there are so few voices in the British Parliament who are outspoken about trying to stop and rein in and bring down to a sensible level the number of immigrants coming into the country. There are so few voices that whenever somebody stands up, it's incredible that somebody even stands up to promote immigration control. But look what they're doing to this one voice that's standing up against the mass immigration, illegal invasion. One voice standing up, and they're trying to crush her before she's even done anything. Okay? If this is how they react to her when she's just talking about it, what are they going to do if she ever manages to actually do something about it? Think about that, okay? They've got to shut her up or get her out the picture and get it replaced with somebody else who just go along with the agenda. So yeah, I mean, she's got a tough time of it. So all I can suggest is that we wish her the best. We hope for the best. We try to send good thoughts to her. Those of us who pray should pray for her, because she is in the heat of the storm, the eye of the storm right now. And the whole deep state is against her. And virtually all the useless politicians at Westminster are against her as well. And the whole civil service will be against her. So she's got a really hard job. Whether she'll be able to pull it off or not, time will tell. But we can be under no illusion about the difficulty which she is facing to try to overturn basically 50 years of the globalist agenda, which has been promoted through Westminster and through the levers of mispower in the British establishment. So she's got a real hard job lined up, but we wish her the very best. And people voted for the Conservative Party. People gave them their 80-seat majority because they thought that the Tories were going to get immigration under control. And unfortunately, it's been a most egregious fail. A most egregious fail, dude, as Bill and Ted would say, as far as that's been concerned. In fact, nothing has been done. In fact, it's got even worse. So the only way that the Conservatives can possibly salvage something in the presumably 2024 general election is if they get the small boats under control. If they don't get that under control, then it will just be another markdown as another fail. And then when Labour come in, well, I can't see Labour actually doing anything about it, but who knows? Maybe they will. But certainly at the moment, the only people talking any kind of sense at the moment is Suella Braverman. So hopefully she will have her allies somewhere in the party and in the state to allow her to carry through what she needs to do. And people say, well, why do these people support? Why is this immigration going on? And there's various reasons, of course, for it. One of the reasons for it is that the British state, the British economy, has been run on sort of cheap labour and mass immigration for years now, with the destruction of the heavy industry in Britain. It's shifted to a much more kind of finance-run economy, which simply just looks at growth, and growth measured by gross domestic product. And so the more people we have in the country, the more economic activity is generated, so the gross domestic product rises. Now, the gross domestic product doesn't rise per head, though, but just overall it appears to rise. And so governments can say, well, look at the growth that we've had there. But actually, the standard of living of individuals doesn't actually increase. It's just the overall GDP that increases. So that's one of the reasons. That's a kind of financial reason for it. Another reason, of course, is ideological. There are a lot of people who just simply want open borders. And you see that on Twitter. Twitter's quite good for making clear the two distinct sides. And you can see on Twitter that one side is that, like, let's just open the borders to everybody. That's the mass media side, the most of the politicians' side, and then there's the other side, which of course we're on, which is no, you need to have borders, which means you need to have controls, which means they need to be enforced. But there is an element of people that just simply want open borders. and that kind of comes from the we're all equal. So if we're all equal, why do we even have nations? Why do we even have borders? It makes no sense to discriminate one type of person from another type of person, or in anything like that. So that we're all equal tends to lead to an open borders attitude to the world. That's one of the reasons for it. A sort of ideological reason. There's also all the human rights legislation and so on, which binds governments into not being able to properly do what they have to do to control immigration. Certainly, it's almost impossible to send anybody back now. The only way you can really do it is to stop them coming in the first place, because once they're in, it's very difficult to get them out because of all the human rights legislation. And a lot of people as well, you see it as well, they just support open borders because that's the easy option. That's the path of least resistance. It's too difficult to think about this. It's too difficult to have controls. It's too difficult to decide who comes in and who doesn't. So let's just let everybody in. That is definitely something that some politicians just submit to. They just go along with that because it's just the easy option, and they don't have the brains or the intelligence to try to figure out answers. So they just give up. That's another reason as well for why we're suffering under what we're suffering. What can be done? Well, there's lots of things that can be done, but one of the things is to stop people coming into the country in the first place, because as I say, once they're in, it's difficult to get them back out again. Another thing is to have a list of countries from which you will allow asylum. And if your country is not on that list, then you're just straight on the plane back. It all comes down to, though, at the end of the day, it all comes down to, do you have the political will and the moral stamina to enforce your borders? And in the old days, we did. But today, after 50 years of globalist propaganda and moral confusion, too many of our decision makers do not have that political will or even political understanding, and certainly don't have the moral stamina to stand up and do what needs to be said. But there are men and women out there who do have that, and they need to be heard and they need to be supported. And when we can find them, then we need to stand by them. Well, Superb Typist says, open borders would also mean that when we go to bed at night, we leave our front doors unlocked and wide open for anyone to enter and take what they want. That's absolutely right. That's right. That would be... The true believing open borders enthusiast should do that, but of course they won't. Hey... Christopher says there is a massive lack of political courage with regard to immigration. I know. It's interesting why that is. It was deliberately made a taboo topic in the 1970s. When it began to be an issue, it was decided we're not going to talk about that. But then it took until the late 90s before it was allowed to enter the mainstream in any way, shape or form. I think it was Michael Howard of the Tories who broached it because he saw the Tory vote slipping in some areas to fringe political parties. So he broached the topic, and it was at that point that it began to enter back into public conversation again. And now it's pretty much in public conversation, but there's still, the politicians still haven't caught up with what they need to do about it. Here's a wee message just for everybody. Please, if you don't already follow us on Facebook, please do so. We began around 3,000 followers and we've now reached 36,000 followers. Please join the winning team. Yes, please do give us a follow on Facebook and a follow on TikTok. Please do follow us on TikTok. If you're not following us on TikTok, for the best pro-UK comment and analysis in the world. And we post every day on TikTok, and we post virtually every day on YouTube, and we post several times a day on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter also. Please do follow us. Marcus says Enoch Powell was the best Prime Minister Britain never had. How he must be rolling in his grave hearing about the state of Britain now. Well, indeed. Adam says we need to get 5 million followers for our YouTube channel. That's absolutely right, and for all our channels. And talking about TikTok, our goal for 2021 was 7,500 followers. Well, this morning I looked and we've got 8,000. Sorry, our goal for 2022 was 7,500 followers. And I looked this morning and we've got over 8,500 followers. So we're absolutely delivering the goods on TikTok. It's a really successful platform. We can't do it without our union supporters, people who help us on a monthly basis, as well as the very kind people who will occasionally send us a one-off donation. And we're absolutely knocking it out the park as far as pro-British content is concerned. And one of the things, of course, that we always do is we always talk about British history. And we're going to talk about British history right now. We're going to talk about On This Day in British History. And we wrote an article this week, why we emphasise our British history. And we brought together some of the themes that we always talk about and told the reader why we do this. And it's basically to tell our national story, to tell the British story, because if you don't have a story, how do you even have a nation? Okay, so you can find our new article, Why We Emphasise British History. You can find that in the comments there. Adam says, if we put all the follower counts together, what's the total? Well, it's I don't know offhand actually, but it should be an awful lot higher than it is. It should be an awful lot higher than it is, but we have been kept in some sort of prison by YouTube. They won't allow us to get out of 1,400 followers after almost 10 years, which is a disgrace, of course, but we keep doing what we can possibly do, and we'll continue to do this for years and years to come. So that's just the fact of it. But we're doing very well on TikTok, very well on Instagram, very well on Facebook. So yes, on this day in British history, and it was on this day 3 years ago that a force for good got Sturgeon Telt. Okay, we got Sturgeon Telt because she had the cheek to come to Glasgow in George Square to a rally which was organised by the national newspaper. And we knew she was going to come, so we thought, well, we have to be there and we have to tell her that her anti-British agitation is not welcome in the great British city of Glasgow. And goodness me, we did that very well. She was at one end with other sort of SNP ne'er-do-wells talking and giving us the misfortune of their opinion. And we were at the other end, and the police had totally locked down George Square. You couldn't get in or out, and there was an awful lot of horses and vans at every entrance into the square, and a cordon of police in front of us. And it was really dramatic. You should have been there if you weren't already there. If you were there, please tell us what you thought about it in the comments. But it was extremely good going. And somebody there says he would love to hit me, Neil Chalmers. Well, Neil, maybe you'll get the opportunity one of these days and you can say hello to me. So let's see some of the photographs. Check that out. We had around 200 people there. And what we did as well, everybody had a whistle. So that as soon as Sturgeon came on, we started just blowing the whistle on her. And okay, another photograph. If you're on TikTok, you won't see these photographs because these are on YouTube. Okay, that's another just shot. There's a shot. You can see the Scottish nationalist there in front of us. And okay, that's quite a good shot. Now these photographs were used by the Daily Express. I'll get on to what happened with the Daily Express in a moment. Okay, that's me talking. That's some of our supporters there. I had a handheld megaphone. Okay, and that's an excellent photograph. SNP liars, Scotland's shame, from one of our very happy warriors, as they say, one of our great supporters there. SNP liars, Scotland's shame, aren't they indeed? And that's a really good picture that just shows the number of us. You can see the police there in the middle. Okay. Now, we got some good publicity with the Sun newspaper, ran a couple of reports. Here's one. Get Sturgeon Telt is the name of the counter-protest held by a Force for Good who describe themselves as a proudly unionist campaign group. AFFG director Alistair McConnachie said, quote, "We will be there to tell her that she does not speak for all of Scotland. Her MPs and MSPs do not speak for all of Scotland and have no right to presume so. This is especially so on Brexit, where they do not even speak for all their own supporters. Glasgow is a great British city, and if she thinks she can swan in and start agitating to break up Britain as if us unionists are going to sit quietly and accept it, then she's got another think coming. We will be there to tell her it's time to get Indy in the bin." Great quote there used by that newspaper. Okay, and this was a report that appeared on the day. And they say that this Mr. FK65 of Dumfries, Scottish nationalist, said, "I'm disappointed I couldn't hear much." And then Nurse SB29, Scottish nationalist, also struggled to make out Miss Sturgeon's address, but she said, "That's not important, I wanted to be here," blah, blah, blah. And then at the bottom it says, Leader Alistair McConnachie yelled through a microphone. Yelled through a microphone. Well, I guess I did yell to an extent, while others waved flags and blew whistles. Mr. McConnachie said, quote, "Our message to Nicola Sturgeon is that she doesn't speak for all of Scotland. The unionist majority is often silent, but not today." Robert 57 said, "I'm loyal to Britain and Scotland, and I don't want independence." Indeed. So a good question about a good. I think that's the actual picture from the actual article that appeared in the Sun, and there down in the bottom left you can see one of our fantastic supporters festooned with our flags, and it says Nick's indie vow as event hit by pro-union demo. Event hit by pro-union demo. Oh, that's quite a good headline. Okay. Harvey has just sent us a message. Harvey, I'll get onto you in a minute about that. That's me yelling, presumably through the microphone in a nice autumn day. Okay. Now this was the story, right? Let me talk about this story. The Daily Express ran an amazingly good story with the headline, "Nicola Sturgeon humiliated as Union Jack waving unionists protest independence rally." And that, as you can see there, was the most read in politics on the Daily Express site. Number one, Nicola Sturgeon humiliated. And that stood as the trending article on the Express website for 36 hours. And then what happened was this really nasty SNP MSP, a real fanatic called Michael Russell, put out a tweet saying that our photographs were faked. Okay, now let's see his tweet here. Michael Russell, "The pictures in this are faked." What a cheek! How on earth do you fake photographs? So what then happened was somebody, and it was probably, possibly, shall we say, him, contacted the Express, told them that our photographs were photoshopped, and the Express took the article down. Okay? In other words, this person, Michael Russell, who, goodness knows, like he's been an MSP in Scotland for years. What a shameful reflection on people in Scotland that they would vote for this man, who is basically a very censorious anti-unionist, who claims that these photographs were faked and got the Express to take this article down. Its most successful article for almost 48 hours. He got it, or somebody connected with him, got the Express to take the article down, okay? So now you can only find that article on the Wayback Machine, and we've got the address there which for that article, which you'll find on the Wayback Machine, and you'll also find the pictures that he claimed were photoshopped and faked, and of course they were not. But that was a wake-up call to us about the extent to which the SNP will attempt to dominate the national press as well if they get stories that they don't like. Okay? No doubt there'll be more of that in the future as well. Now, we've got a wee competition coming up for this badge, lest we forget. Okay? And I'll ask you a question just now, and please send your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk. And the question is, this day, on the 2nd of November 2019, A Force for Good got Sturgeon Telt. In which great British city? That's the question, an easy question. If you've got the answer to that, fire it to contact@aforceforgood.uk, and we will announce the winner at the top of the hour. And talking about products, we've got 2 new greeting cards that we've produced. Next year, 2023, is going to be the 420th anniversary of the Union of the Crowns. It's also going to be the year that King Charles is crowned, but we're celebrating the Union of the Crowns anniversary early, and we've produced this greeting card of King James the 6th of Scots, who became King of Great Britain. And as he says there, wherefore we have thought good to discontinue the dividing names of England and Scotland out of our regal style, and do intend and resolve to take and assume unto us in manner and form hereafter expressed the name and style of King of Great Britain. And on the back, it's empty inside, and on the back there's a wee write-up there about the Union of the Crowns. So a fantastic wee educational item as well. We use these, we send cards to everybody who contacts us or buys stuff from us. That's our little complimentary greeting card that we include. But we also sell them to people who are interested at our shop, aforceforgood.uk/shop-1. And another classic card that we've produced here. Check this out. Rule Britannia. Britannia rule the waves. Lovely painting there from 1876 by Nicholas Francis Habb, called Britannia rule the waves, which shows Britannia and Neptune riding a chariot preceded by tritons blowing conch shells and accompanied by frolicking sea nymphs. frolicking sea nymphs. That's a good phrase. I like saying that. Frolicking sea nymphs. Around the inside of the rainbow it says, "Rule Britannia, Britannia, rule the waves. Britons never shall be slaves." Fantastic stuff. We come up with some great ideas here at A Force for Good. We really do. Derek says, great cards, need to order soon. Harvey says, going to send a lovely card to my SNP voting family member. Harvey, or anybody else who's a union supporter, when you become a union supporter, we will automatically be notified, and then we'll contact you with the range of rewards that we're going to be very happy to send you. You will have to explain a triton. A triton is half man, half fish. You learn something on every program here. And there's difference between a sea nymph and a mermaid as well. That could be a question for the future, but there is a definite difference. I had to look it up. Now, just talking about crazy nationalist stuff, right? I had to read 6 copies of The National yesterday in preparation for this program, and that's always a hard ask to do that. It really is. I mean, anyway, but sometimes you get light relief at the letters page, and I cut this one out because it's just fantastic. I thought I was aware of everything that the Scottish nationalists believed, every crazy conspiracy theory. I thought I knew them all, but here's a new one, and the new one is that England is responsible for causing Scots to be addicted to whisky. Freedom and whisky do not in fact gang together, which means go together. And this person, look at this letter, he's written a whole long letter about this. And he goes, you can date the industrialisation of whisky manufacture to a period when unrest against the Union had almost died out. Almost as if the sleek political masters were saying, you've lost your country, but look at this marvellous product we will allow you to drink, and forget about the fact that you're being taxed. And he asks, was alcohol some kind of consolation? Was it a way of keeping the recalcitrant Celts quiet? I wouldn't put it past Westminster, because after all, where is England's national drink? If my opinions seem a bit too far-fetched, check out the Scotch Whisky Association's frequent anti-independence statements. Oh man, I was speaking to somebody about this today, and they goes, well, you know, England's got alcohol. I mean, haven't they heard of the Wurzels? You know, I am a cider drinker, I drink it all of the day. I mean, that's in Somerset at least. And Buckfast, I mean, that's Devon. And there was Old English mead as well, okay? So I don't think you can blame the English for whisky in Scotland. But, I mean, at least that guy is trying to blame them for that. But that's something that we'll add to our file. We have a particular file which is highlighted stupid things that Scottish nationalists say, and that's going in there. The latest, there was one as well. Somebody, maybe the same person, they wrote a whole long letter about why they didn't like Only Fools and Horses, the comedy show, you know. And I don't know exactly. I'd need to look that one out, but like I've got a whole. I could write a book on this because I've been collecting them for like 20 years or thereabouts. Now, where are we? There's something I wanted to say. Yes, this is important. Rishi Sunak. you're a great guy and all of that, but you need to be awfully careful how you speak. How you speak in Westminster and how you talk to the Scottish nationalists, okay? Because I've noticed, Mr. Sunak, that you are talking about Scotland within the Scottish nationalist frame. Now, for example, here is Sunak. Ooh, almost knocked that over. Here is Sunak rejecting Sturgeon's demands for a second referendum. And he says that it had been important for him to talk to Sturgeon on his first day. Quote, "I wanted to express my desire to work constructively with the Scottish government so we can work together to deliver for the people of Scotland, and that is what I plan to do." Well, that sounds fine and all dandy, but there he says, work constructively with the Scottish government. Now, I saw him today. One of the Scottish nationalist MPs stood up and asked him some kind of retarded question. And he responded by saying, what people across Scotland rightly want to see is both their governments working constructively together. Now, this is the Scottish nationalist frame talking about the Scottish government without mentioning that it's a devolved government, okay? Now, we've spoken at great length in the past that we shouldn't talk about the Scottish government, we should talk about the Scottish administration if you properly want to understand its constitutional relationship within the British Constitution, where you have your central British collective parliament and you have the arms that come off it, which are devolved but which are not on the same level as the central government and the central parliament. The devolved arms, they're arms of the British Parliament. They're not separate sovereign governments in and of themselves. That's the wrong frame to think about. Now, so the fact is, Holyrood is a devolved arm of the British Parliament, and when you see it like that, you realise that Westminster and Holyrood, they can't chop its arm off. And they shouldn't be chopping its arm off. You need to be, if you're the Prime Minister, whenever you get that dispatch box, you've got the mic. So what you want to be doing is educating the Scottish nationalists and educating the viewers into the nature of the British state, which at present is got the central parliament with its devolved arms. Okay, if you insist on calling them governments, then at least call them devolved governments so that we can understand when we hear you that these are different forms of government. They're not equal governments. We don't have two governments. Scots don't have two governments. We've got one British government and we've got a devolved arm of the British government, which is an administration at Holyrood. That's the correct constitutional way of understanding things. Okay, so please use your mic in order to emphasize the correct constitutional relationship, which is that we have a central British Parliament and we have devolved arms of that Parliament. And if you insist on calling the Holyrood a government, at least call it a devolved government. Now, somebody's sending me messages here. Absolutely. So, that's the point that I wanted to make on that. Because otherwise, what happens is that people think, okay, if the Scottish government is a government like Westminster's a government, why isn't the Scottish government independent? Why isn't it sovereign? And the reason, of course, as we know, is because it's not actually a fully independent government. It's a devolved arm of the British Parliament. But if you insist on thinking of it as equivalent to the British Parliament, you are going to think that it is equivalent, and you're then going to say, well, it should be independent. It's obviously not independent because it's getting held back. Why is it getting held back? It must be getting, it must be getting put upon. So I need to actually produce an article properly on that and send it to the guy so that he understands, because it's very important. Because here's a big long letter that another Scottish nationalist wrote in The National. Why September the 3rd is an important date in Scotland's history. And that was the date that Alex Salmond changed the name, because he could, from Scottish Executive to Scottish Government. And as this person quite rightly says, from the Scottish National's perspective, the cosmetic change implemented by Salmond has had massive implications for the normalisation of the idea of restoring Scotland's independence. It has had a transformative effect on Scottish politics. It certainly has, and not, of course, for the best. So Paul says, that struck me too. Sunak was responding to a very loaded question by an Alba Party MP. That's right, the Alba Party MP said, do you accept that, are we a union of equals, or are we a colony of the British state, or something totally retarded like that? And Sunak stood up and just started talking about the Scottish government. Well, that was an opportunity for him to address the issues that bloke had actually raised, all of which can be properly addressed. But he gave a good answer. He gave a kind of, although albeit quite just kind of offhand answer. Nevertheless, it would have been a teaching moment if he had been fully briefed on the correct constitutional relationship of the United Kingdom. And that other thing about the union of equals, that needs to be addressed as well. We'll do that as a Busting Indie Myth one of these days. Now, good news is we have a winner. We asked the question on this day, on the 2nd of November in 2019. A Force for Good and our fantastic supporters got Sturgeon Telt when she came to George Square in which great British city? And of course the answer was Glasgow. And our winner is Paul Hadlow. Wonderful, Paul. That's good. This little badge, lest we forget, will be winging its way to you tomorrow. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to also throw in a couple of cards for you as well. Which you can get at our shop. And what you can also get at our shop as well, as we said, we don't have any more of these left, but we do have these Battle of Britain flags. They're kind of, can we see them? There you go. Battle of Britain flags. They say, down there they say, the Battle of Britain. Never was so much owed by so many to so few. 1940. You can get them at our shop. Good stuff. Super Typist says, great show, great chat, everyone. Thank you, Super Typist, and thanks for your comments, which helped us to. AR Entertainment says, Channel 4 is 40 years old today. Debbie says, congrats, Paul. Stuart says, well done, Paul. Super Typist says, congrats, Paul. Alan says, well done. And Christopher says, we are a unitary state. That's right. It's not about Scotland versus England. It's about Scotland and England together for the best of us all together. Derek liked the show. Thank you, Derek. You're a great supporter and we do value your work. Okay, folks, it is the top of the hour. Thank you very much to everybody who has come in on TikTok, on Twitter, on YouTube, and especially, of course, on Facebook. Thank you to everybody. Please give us a share. Please give us a like. Please give us a follow. And Nicola says, congrats, Paul. Harvey says, thanks for the show. Glad I was finally able to become a part of it. Well, thank you too. And Paul says, thanks. Thank you, Paul, for everything that you do as well. And Christopher says, thanks to all at A Force for Good. Well, we're going to be here fighting the good fight. And as I say, if you're not able to come out with us when we're doing stuff, you can always support us behind the scenes. And there's a variety of ways that you can do that by becoming a union supporter or donating or buying merchandise from our shop, aforceforgood.uk/shop-1. It just remains for me to say, folks, we'll be back next week. So until then, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. See you next week.